It's kind of like you're just chaining a bunch of things together, and one of the things has a small effect, but in conjunction, all those small effects really matter, and they become exponential changes if you go back into like the earlier part of the stack and manipulate them in like weird ways. I mean, you can get insane sounds. I just did that as a demo to show you how I created the following sound. Really zappy. So first things first, what is AUTOCYCLE? AUTOCYCLE is when you cause a sound to self-oscillate. That's basically when you loop a micro-fragment and then create a note out of the thing that's looping. And then you can tune it to like a perfect C and then repitch it across the keyboard so you can play it. For instance, let's just create a basic sound right now. I'm going to use my voice to create a basic sound. Ah. We chop that ah out of that recording. Ah, ah, ah. We can now play it back using this MIDI controller. Ah, ah, ah. So it's just my ah. I recorded it using the mic, so it says mic 1. It was on track 1. Now, ah, ah, ah. Anytime you see this MIDI note come up here, ah, ah, that means that I'm triggering it from the keyboard. Ah. It gets really weird if you start pitching it up. So with this ah, what we're going to do is we're going to turn on loop right here. Ah. And what that means is that every time it gets to the end, it's just going to start over. I'm holding the key down right now. Anytime it reaches this end marker, it's going to start playing from the beginning again. Let me bring it closer. In order to make this AUTOCYCLE, we really need to get a small micro chop. If I throw a tuner on the end, we can see what note we're playing. We want to try and get as close to a note as possible so that it lights up green. We're 5.6 cents sharp. So what we can do is go into controls here and then detune our note about 5 or 6 cents. Let's turn off warp. You can see that now it's a perfect F. So what we did is we turned off warp, then we tuned it minus 6 cents. And that brings it down to a perfect F. The only issue is that since I'm playing this with a C key, I now want to transpose it down 5 semitones so that F is now playing a C. Pretty cool. Here's down an octave again, down an octave again. That's pretty awesome, actually. The next step is just to treat this like it's a basic instrument. What do we want this instrument to do? First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have it be fixed velocity. So regardless of how heavily I press the key, it's going to play back at the same volume. The next thing I could do is throw an arpeggiator on it. You could use chord to play an octave in unison. I'm just going to shape it with basic audio effects. This cuts out a lot of that low end. We can decide what frequencies we want to boost with resonance. We could also turn on drive. We could also throw an auto filter on the front and cut out all the highs. And if we were trying to make like a really clean bass tone, this might be something that's like close to a sub. We might throw some erosion on the end. Might throw some redux. Let me take off this low pass filter. So here's the sound. We were able to create a basic sound really quickly just using our voice. And I just did that as a demo to show you how I made the following sound. The way that I created this was I had a bunch of pedals hooked up in a sequence and the battery in one of them died. So I just got this really weird tone, and that's what I used to repitch across the whole keyboard. When you AUTOCYCLE it, as in you zoom in on it and you play just a fragment, sounds like this, which I think is a great zap. But if I were to let it go, it sounded more like this. Just this steady sort of nasally zap, and that's what I used to repitch across the keyboard. I have pitch dropped an octave. After that, I have the tuner. It's out of tune right now because I messed with the playback mark. I'm playing F right now, so we should get an F. Close enough. We got an F sharp. I can then tune it down and then boost this up 1 cent. So that's how you might tune it again. What's really fun about this is that each sample can create multiple synths. I also had the option to turn on simple delay, and that's for Haas effect. These are out of sync with each other. One is 1 millisecond delayed to the left, and one is 12.7 milliseconds delayed to the right. So you should have this like really wide sound. The next iteration, I just kind of started adding more stuff to it. I added note length, so you can change the notes to be all the same length. It kind of just helps like keep your playing really clean if they're all the same length, especially if you choose note length that is like in sync with the BPM of the song. Again, we've isolated like just this little part of the wave. I have a tuner afterwards. We then transpose the samples so it'd be perfectly in tune. This is an amp simulator by STL Tones. I have some kick boost if you want it. It can add some resonance around the low end. I also have a saturation knob. We have the high pass, so it cuts out all the low end. And then we have left selected, so it's a mono signal. Anytime you take a stereo channel and you only take the left or the right, you're essentially making it mono. And sub sounds like this. It sounds huge once you start to layer it with another instrument. Everything below E3 is filtered out. They're bused to the same group. And what we have is an auto filter to filter both of them. I have Bark of Dog, which is a subwoofer simulator. This is passive. This is classic. Passive is what we want. And at the end, I'm using Cymatics Vortex, which is a saturation plugin. Gross. This is what it sounds like with sub off. I just really like it. Like, I don't know what it is. I think it's just an awesome, like, almost metallic sound. And you don't need all this stuff on it if you don't want to. At the end, you can kind of really shape it to be whatever you want it to be. So maybe our dead battery didn't have a lot of low-end content, but since you're adding in the sub, once it gets processed in the same group, you have a pretty sick bass tone. We can decide how much low end is in it. We can decide how brassy we want this. How muffled we want it. We can decide how like overdriven or rumbly we want the sound. We can also decide how rattly we want the sound. What I did here is I brought up the room reverb. That's kind of what brings out that like Terminator zap. This is now lower, it's back to 5%, which is what I had it at. We can sort of bring out these weird ghost harmonics by boosting the resonance on just the synth alone and not the sub. We can decide how much overdrive we want. It's kind of like you're just chaining a bunch of things together, and one of the things has a small effect, but in conjunction, all those small effects really matter, and then they change the end sound.